we had said yesterday in module 2. I'll be presenting the screen. Okay. What is the title of module 2? Ashwin P. What was the main title of module 2? Vishnu P.
UML
No,
diagrammatic.
well, we finished it day before yesterday. Yesterday I started module 2. Now, please write down the main headings, okay? Otherwise you won't get a continuation for the next class. Yesterday I started with module 2. I'll be sharing the screen. Anybody else remember what I had said yesterday in Ashwati C? I think Harita was answering my questions yesterday. Yes, I know. Anushree, co-design process, hardware, software, co-design process. Vishnu, did you hear what I said?
Yes.
Yeah, yesterday we started with hardware, software, co-design process. And we compared this co-design process with traditional approach. That is the method that was followed in the olden days. Then this traditional method had several drawbacks. To overcome that drawback, embedded system designers adopted a new approach called the embedded hardware software co-design process. And we were discussing about co-design process, the steps in co-design. How many steps were there? Yes, two stages or two steps. What were those steps? Do you remember the steps? Yes, system design was the first step. The first step, second step, architectural design. Very good. So that is a sure question. Co-design process. So yesterday we started with module 2. This was the main title, hardware, software, co-design process. And we first discussed about traditional approach and its disadvantages. Then we went to the novel or the new approach for embedded system design, where the hardware, the embedded system has two parts, hardware and software. When both of them together form an embedded system. So we have to design both hardware and software. If how can we design the two? Designing is a must, because only after designing a product we will be able to implement the product. So hardware has to be designed, as well as software also needs to be designed, and this design should be done together. That is what we mean here by co-design, and they should be co-developed instead of independently developing both. The traditional approach used to follow independent development approach, whereas here the new approach follows co-design approach, co-development. That is, they are both are tested as they are developed. They are tested. Hardware and the software, they are tested. The software is embedded into the hardware and tested in parts. And only after uncovering errors and solving the errors, the next stage is carried out. So, whereas in the traditional approach, in hardware was developed fully and by some developers, software by another set of developers, and finally they are integrated, and a lot of problems, a lot of errors will be uncovered at the final stage, and that results in wastage of time. Solving the errors or fixing the bugs needed a lot of time. Sometimes they had to change the hardware as a whole in order to solve the problem. So that independent development was a very difficult process, and so they adopted the co-design process. And this co-design process has two stages. First is system design, second is architectural design. And what we discussed about all these steps yesterday, capturing requirements and then converting into functional requirements, and then we have these functional requirements. Some of the functional requirements will be mapped to hardware, some will be mapped to software, and then we are developing architecture for the hardware part and the architecture for the software part. And these were the two steps. And finally, once you get the architecture, the hardware is translated into the hardware design is translated into the actual hardware, and the software part, software model is transferred into a programming language. It's implemented using a programming language. Anyways, for software, you need a programming language. So there are programming languages designed for embedded applications, and using one of the programming language, it is the software or the firmware is implemented. So to implement, before implementation, we have to design the system, and designs are often captured in computational models. Models are nothing but representation of the system that is going to be developed. So after designing, after capturing hardware processing requirements, they are first converted into computational models, and looking at the computational model, the hardware components are built, and looking at the software computational models, the firmware is built using some programming language. And this is what we covered yesterday. Till here we covered yesterday. Now the second question. This is one important question which we covered. That is, what is hardware software co-design process, of the steps in hardware software co-design process? That is one university question. It's a repeated university question. So another question. This module has all direct questions in it. So you have to study all these sections thoroughly, and you will get full marks if you study these direct questions, because these are repeated questions. So the next section is issues in hardware software co-design, the fundamental issues. We said that a co-design process is better than the traditional process. But even with this new approach, there can be issues faced by the developers. What are the issues issues faced by the developers when they follow this co-design process? So basically, there are four issues faced by the developers when they follow the co-design process. The first issue is selecting the model, which model to select. Then second, we'll come to this in detail. Second is selecting the architecture. How can we select a particular architecture for a particular product? Then selecting the language. Selecting the language means how can we select? There are several languages with different language facilities that supports embedded product development. So how will we choose a particular language for developing a particular product? And last is partitioning system requirements into hardware and software. As we said earlier, hardware requirements are captured in computational models, and software parts also are captured in computational models. So how can we separate these two? How will you separate the hardware from software? That is an issue faced by the developers. So these are the four issues faced by the designers, the developers. That is selecting the model, selecting the architecture, selecting the language, and then partitioning the system requirements into hardware and software. Are you writing down these points? If you write down these points, you'll remember it tomorrow, or you will be able to answer my questions tomorrow. Are you noting down the points? Hello? At least write it once, okay, so that you can study it. Don't waste time by just listening to what I'm saying. Just write down the main points. It is for your benefit only, okay, so that you can understand what is going on. Are you writing it down? Always be ready with a book, a notebook, and a pen for this class, okay? And write down the main headings. It will be easy for you at the end when you study. So what are the main issues? Can anyone say the main issues? Those who are writing down will be able to answer. Should I repeat it once more? Hello? I'm not getting any response. And only 16 of you have joined, I think. Where are the rest? Okay, okay. Selecting the model, selecting the architecture, selecting the language, and the last one. And the last one. Selecting the model, selecting the architecture, selecting the okay, partitioning system requirements into hardware and software. Yes. Partitioning, that word is very important. This requirements. We collect a lot of requirements from the customer, and we have to clearly distinguish which all requirements come under hardware part and which all requirements are related to software part. The requirements which are more related to hardware should be put under hardware part, and the requirements which are more related to software or which are purely software should come under software part. So partitioning the requirements into hardware and software has to be done clearly. Otherwise, this is the developers will face problems during implementation phase. So these are the issues that they face. So partitioning accurately into hardware and software should be done by experts. So that the implementation phase is not that difficult. So for these are the four issues. Now let us go on to the first issue. What do you mean by selecting the model? So as we know, we have studied UML before in the first module, and this UML has several diagrams. As I said, there were how many diagrams in UML? Do you remember how many diagrams we have said in UML? Anyone? No one remembers. There were around 10 diagrams in UML, 9 basic diagrams. One was an additional diagram, that is package diagram. And all these diagrams, they are design diagrams which will capture the product that is going to be developed. Product has not yet been developed, but we are going to develop a product. And looking at the diagram, it will clearly help us to visualize what the product will look like. And to visualize the product, we used these diagrams, and around 10 diagrams were there in UML. And these diagrams, they serve as a model of the product that is going to be developed. Look, we are, when we construct a house, before constructing the house, we draw the plan for the house. Actually, that plan is not the actual house. It is only a model of the house that is going to be built. And looking at the plan, we can visualize how many rooms are there in this plan, how the actual house will look like. So we are just visualizing ourselves looking at that particular figure, the plan. And here also, looking at that UML diagram, we are visualizing how our product, how our software, or how our embedded system will be. So these diagrams, they are just models which help us to visualize how the final product will look like. And selecting the model means, as I said, there are 9 or 10 diagrams in UML, and which diagram can we choose to accurately represent the entire system is a main concern for the designers, because when designers need to switch between various models from the beginning first phase to the last phase, as we said in first module, the uh, embedded system design process, there were 5 stages in embedded system design process. First, the most important question in first module was this: what are the stages in embedded system design process? Do you remember the stages? Embedded system design process, the different stages in embedded system design process. There was a figure. Do you remember that? The 5 stages, it is an important question. That's why I'm taking this again. It's just like software engineering phases. I said there are different stages for embedded system design also. See, this is an important question in first module, embedded system design process. The stages in embedded, this is the most important figure in first module, the embedded system design process. These are the stages in the design process. Do you remember this? Anyone who remembers this can answer. Yes, okay. What are the phases I did that? Please study all these questions by, at least you can study it by heart, because these are short questions for university. So these are the different phases in embedded system design process. That is, the first phase is requirements, then specification, then architecture, then components, and then system integration. So in each of these phases, you need different diagrams to represent the phase, because the objective of requirements phase may be different from the objective of specification phase, and the objective of specification phase is different from architecture, it is different from, so each of these phases have its own objectives, and to capture these objectives you need the diagram that is suited to capture the objective. So for the requirements phase, you have to use a diagram that captures the requirements of the system, and the requirements of the system is most often captured in an UML diagram called the use case diagram. So in this phase, the model, the developers depend on use case diagram. So when coming to architecture, they depend on the architectural diagrams, and like the activity, state chart diagram, etc. And coming to components, they depend on the component diagram, and integration, they depend on the deployment diagram. So all these diagrams in different stages are different because the objectives are different. So which diagram to choose is the main concern during the development of a product. So designers switch between a variety of models from requirements to implementation. So since the objective varies, they have to choose the correct model suited for the correct stage. So that's what is written here. During specification phase stage, the model should capture functionality of the system, and during implementation stage, the model should capture the system structure. So to capture the functionality of the system, we have several means, like you have the use case diagram, and when coming to the system architecture, we have more than one diagrams, like class diagram, object diagram, etc. So which diagram can be used to capture the details more easily or more effectively is the main concern. Some developers may depend on class diagram, whereas some developers may depend on object diagram. But the actual diagram which is to be chosen is not strictly followed. It depends on the developer who is going to choose the diagram. So that is a major issue. If one developer is going to use class diagram and another person is going to use object diagram, then there can be slight variations in the architecture that is going to be built. So that is one of the issues faced during co-design. That is, which diagram, which model to select is a concern, because there are several structural diagrams, there are several behavioral diagrams, and because of this, certain diagrams may be used by certain developers, some other diagrams will be used by other developers, and there can be all diagrams cannot capture everything. So there can be differences in the model that they represent, these each developers represent. Then second issue is selecting the architecture. Architecture specifies how a system is going to be implemented. So looking at the architecture, or we can say it's a block diagram of the system that we are going to develop. And looking at the architecture, we can easily find out the different components that make up the system and the interconnection between these components. So earlier we have studied a GPS moving map system. There we are looking at the architecture itself, we can find out there is a GPS receiver, there is a database to search for the details, etc. So what are the components that make up the system can be easily understood by looking at the architecture. And there are several architectures. Again, Since there are more than one architecture, again, the developers find it difficult to choose which architecture for the product that they are going to develop. So, since there are more than one options, it is a concern which one to choose. That is what we mean by issues here. So some of the architectures include, first one, the controller architecture. Controller architecture means it implements a state machine model, and the state machine model has two parts: a state register which holds the present state, and two combinational circuits. You might have studied in digital electronics, there are combinational circuits and sequential circuits. Here, this architecture makes use of two combinational circuits which implements the logic for the next state and the output. So using these two components, the controller architecture implements its functionality. So if an embedded product is using a state register or a combinational circuit, depends on a combinational circuit, then this architecture can be chosen. Then next is a data path architecture. This data path architecture represents, now what is a data path? Actually, a data path is a channel between input and output. The point at which we give in input till we get an output, the intermediate stages through which this data gets processed is called the data path. So the data path represents a channel between input and output. So the output will be generated as a result of some computational process, and this data path will contain, that is the path from which the input flows in order to reach the output. It will contain certain digital units, certain units such as processing units such as registers, counters, register files, memories, and ports. Ports, we have to give in data through ports, along with high speed arithmetic units, that is ALU. All these together will process the input and generate the output, just like a microprocessor system. We said earlier that embedded system is mostly microprocessor or microcontroller dependent. So this data path, it contains whatever needed to change the modify or process the input to get the output. And in a microprocessor based system, we have registers, counters, register files, then memory and ports in order to transform the input into output. And these ports connect the data path to buses, and these through this we can give input and receive the output. And arithmetic units are connected in parallel for high performance computation. For high performance applications, simple applications, we have a simple circuit, whereas for high performance applications, arithmetic units should be connected in parallel to support parallel processing. So this is another architecture, the data path architecture. Then the third architecture is the finite state machine architecture. So finite state machine data path architecture. In short, we can call it as FSMD architecture. And this again implements, it is a combination of the first two, that is a controller with a data path. This is the controller architecture. Second is the data path architecture, and a controller with a data path forms the third architecture, that is finite state machine data path architecture. That is, it implements a controller with a data path. Just remember that it's a combination of first and second. A controller architecture, second is data path architecture, and third is a controller with a data path, and that is called finite state machine data path architecture. So the controller generates the control inputs, and the data path processes the data. So the main function of controller is to generate control inputs, and the data path will process the data. And this data path consists of two types of input-output ports. Now we said data should be given as input, and you have to get the output also. And it is the input and output happens through the ports. And there are two types of I/O ports. One is the control port, and the other is the data port. So there are two types of I/O ports in this architecture. One is the control port, and the other is the data port. And control port is for sending or receiving control signals to the controller. Just like if you want to initiate a read operation, a read signal should be sent, or if you want to initiate a write operation, the write signal should be activated. So for sending the control signals to the controller unit, you need the control ports, and the data ports is it interfaces the data path with external world. For example, to receive, to get the to supply input to the system, or to get output, we use the data ports. So that is the second architecture. So I said it was a combination of controller, the first two architecture, controller architecture and data path architecture. So this architecture implements controller with a data path. Then the fourth architecture is the complex instruction set computing architecture, CISC, complex instruction set computing architecture. So it uses an instruction set representing complex operations. You might have studied instruction sets when you had studied microprocessors. There we come across instruction set for each processor, 8085, 8086 processor, etc. And here, this architecture also depends on the instruction set that a particular processor uses, and that is it uses an instruction set representing complex operations. An example of a complex instruction is given here, the CJNE. This is an instruction code. This is a opcode. You might have studied opcode and operand, etc. in microprocessors. So this is the opcode for an instruction that compares the jump if not equal. That is compare and jump if not equal. That is what is meant by this instruction. Compare and jump. First you have to compare, maybe given two numbers. Compare the two numbers and jump if the numbers are not equal. That is what is CJNE instruction means. And this CJNE instruction is for 8051 instruction set architecture. ISA is instruction set architecture. So for the 8051 microcontroller, there is an instruction called CJNE instruction. The CJNE instruction means compare and jump if not equal. And in 8085 and all, we have an instruction to compare, then we have an instruction to jump, and we have another instruction to jump if not equal. And these are three different instructions in 8085. But here in this complex instruction set operation, it is a single instruction. That is, CJNE instruction is a single complex instruction which performs the following operations. That is, reading a register value. It will read the contents of a register value specified in the instruction, and then it compares it with a given value. Maybe it is an accumulator or in some other register or a default register or a temporary register. It compares it with a given value, and then it transfers the program execution to a new address location. So after reading a register value, compares it with the given, that is, a given value means the value can be input to the instruction. For example, CJNE A comma FFH. FFH is as I'm saying the hex code. So it will compare this FF with the A register, contents of A register, and if they are not equal, then it will cause a jump. So that is what is meant by this instruction: reading a register value, compare it with a given value, and then transfer the program execution to a new address location. Using a single instruction to do multiple operations, it reduces program memory access. So I said for 8085 or 8086, it may be 2 or 3 instructions, but here it is a single instruction, which means the advantage is that it will reduce program memory access, and you need not read 3 instructions from memory, just need to read 1 instruction. For reading 3 instructions results in if each instruction has at least 3 machine cycles, then it will take 9 machine cycles to read an instruction. But here it can be done in, if it is written using a single instruction, you can reduce it to 1/3 of the machine cycles needed. So using a single instruction to do multiple operations, it reduces program memory access, and also the size of the program also gets reduced. And so reducing the size of the program using complex instructions is what is meant by complex instruction set computing. You're reducing the size of the program, but as the size of the program reduces, each instruction becomes complex because it is doing multiple operations using a single instruction. Then the fifth architecture is the very large scale instruction board architecture, and it represents multiple functional units on a data path. Initially we said there is a single data path, but if there are multiple functional units on a data path, then we call it as very large instruction board architecture. And the sixth one is parallel processing architecture. Parallel processing architecture, you might have studied single instruction, multiple data stream, multiple instruction, multiple data stream architectures, etc. in detail. And making use of such architectures, we call it as they are these here the instruction execution is carried out in parallel, and it implements multiple concurrent processing elements, each of which has a data. So several data paths are implemented here, with each data path containing registers and its own local memory. And two types of parallel processing architectures are SIMD architecture and MIMD architecture. This is a single instruction, multiple data stream architecture in which there is a single instruction is executed in parallel. The CPU, the processor will read a single instruction, but the single instruction is executed in parallel. There can be different processes happening in an single instruction. All these processes are executed in parallel. Then multiple instruction, multiple data stream, it executes different instructions at a given point of time, and there would be multiple data streams flowing for each instruction. So here we said a single instruction is partitioned into several parts, and the entire instruction is executed in parallel. But here we have multiple instructions and many instructions executing in parallel. Here, a single instruction executing in parallel. In MIMT, we have multiple instructions executing in parallel. And so that is parallel processing architecture. Then, so these are the 6 architectures that the designers can choose in order to implement a product. And choosing which architecture is the major concern that they face. So that is selecting the architecture. Since there are 6 different architectures commonly found in developing embedded products, the architectures face a problem to choose the correct architecture which is needed for the product. But looking at, they have to study the architecture, they have to find out which architecture is suitable for their product and choose the architecture accordingly. So that is an issue. Studying the architecture, finding out which architecture to choose is a concern. Then the next issue is selecting the language. Now, as we said earlier, there are several languages that support embedded system development. Which language to use for your product is a major concern. So once we select a language, and if we start implementing a product, and after implementing half of the product, after reaching half of the development stage, we cannot change the language. If you are changing the language, then you have to redo the entire work again. So before starting the implementation phase, we have to select the correct language suitable for implementing the product. So selecting which language to choose is also a major concern that developers face. So here a model can be captured using multiple programming languages like C, C++, C#, Java, etc. for software implementation. And languages like System C, Verilog, etc. can be used for hardware implementation. So these languages, they have hardware commands built into the language, and they can be used for hardware implementation. So the only prerequisite for selecting the programming language is that the language should capture the model easily. The language should be best suited to implement the model. So only if the language has features to implement the model, then we can choose that particular language. Even when you do your project, you have to choose the language in a way that your objectives are correctly met by the language, or the language will support your implementation. Like if you are going to use a database, and if you're going to use languages that like C or C++, which has less library functions that support a database, then you will find it a problem to implement the database. But if you're going to use other languages like .NET or SQL or Visual Basic, you will find that there are these are Java, etc. They support database implementation, so it is easy for you to implement your system. So choose the language should be able to capture the model easily. Only then you can choose a particular language. If the language provides less facilities to build the product, then you cannot choose that language. So you have to understand what are the facilities available in different languages in order to select the language. C++ is good for capturing object-oriented model. So if you are going to implement an object-oriented model, you can use C++ or any language that's about object orientation. Then the last one is partitioning system requirements into hardware and software. That is, you have to, after collecting the requirements from the customer, You have to find out what are the hardware trade-offs and what are the software trade-offs. And looking at these trade-offs, we can find out how to divide the requirements. What are the requirements that come under hardware and what are the requirements that come under software? And the main hardware software trade-offs are listed here. This was a 3-mark question for one of the university question, KTU question. That is, what are the trade-offs in hardware software co-design? There is what are the trade-offs in embedded system, hardware software trade-offs in embedded system development? So that is the first point is the processing speed and performance. The second is frequency of change or reconfigurability. Third is the memory size and gate count, the number of units required to implement the product. And then the reliability of the system, the man hours or the effort and the cost required. And looking at all these, you have to decide how the hardware can be chosen and how the software can be chosen. So cost factor, mainly when you choose hardware parts, the cost is a main concern. So the device should be developed at low cost only, that it will survive in the market. So all these trade-offs should be considered when you partition the system into hardware and software. So deciding how the performance speed or the processing speed or performance will affect the system is a major concern that designers face. They cannot determine in advance how the processing, since the system is not built yet, they cannot determine how the processing speed will affect the system or how will the system performance be calculated, etc. They cannot identify it beforehand. So they face problems in all these areas. The frequency of change, that is, will the system needs change frequently or will the system work without any changes for a long period? They have to consider all these before they build a system, like the memory size required for developing the system, the number of gate counts, the digital logic gates required, then how reliable the system will be, what will be the effort required to build the system, what will be the cost of the system. All these factors should be considered when they consider the requirements of the system, whether it is hardware or software. After partitioning, they should consider all these factors. So that is that determining how or finding out how these factors affect the system is a major concern for the developers. So these are the issues that the developers face when they develop an embedded product. So these are the 4 issues that the developers face when they start developing a product. Fundamental issues. The 4 issues that developers face when in hardware software co-design process. Hello. Can you hear me? Hello? Okay. Why the number reduced to 13 now? Oh no, sorry, 24. 24 means only 22 are present here. So please say your attendance. Number 1, Abhilash. Okay. Number 2, Abhinav, absent. Number 3, number 5, number 6, Anushri. Number 7, Arjun. Number 8, Ashwin. Number 9, Atul. Number 11, okay, number 12, absent. Number 13, present. And number 14, Justin. Number 16, absent. Number 17, Mridula. Okay. Number 18, number 20,
Miss number 16 present.
Evada? Midlaj. Okay. Number 22. Number 22. Sharath PV. Number 23. Number 23. Okay. Number 24. Number 26. Number 27. Number 28. Number 29. Number 30. Number 31. Number 32. Number 32. Didina. Number 33. Number 3. Amal Santosh. Okay. Today's absent is number 12 and number 22. Number 2, 12, and 22. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.